It's your boy Medi.
It's your boy Vetti.
It's your boy Medi.
It's your boy Vetti.
And it's your boy Andy.
Ender,
This is the playoffs. Can we take this a little bit more seriously, please, Ender?
Please.
Can we
Wait,
just
guys,
focus?
I thought we were...
Guys,
SK
I'm
versus
Evan
Splyce.
Chamberlain, it's Andrew Vetti Estate, Christian Firesen. We apologize for our call.
Really sorry.
It's playoffs. It's SK versus Splyce. It's going to be a good series, I am sure. We saw Fnatic take their first round 1 game yesterday, and these guys are fighting to contend against Fnatic next week.
Yes, they certainly are. I'm expecting a pretty exciting game. The fact that Fnatic chose Vitality, many people were wondering, ooh, how will that look? How will that matchup go? And it was a very one-sided affair. Then we heard from Duke today that Splyce consider themselves the strongest of the 4 teams in round 1. So we'll see if they can match up against Fnatic's dominance that we saw from them yesterday.
And on the other side of the rift, of course, SK Gaming coming in after winning the tiebreaker match, led by Selfmade in the early game. A lot of people watching know just how good this man is and wondering how hard can SK challenge against Splyce.
Now, one of the big things we talked about, Ender, is junglers and AD carries. We heard it from Duke. It was a big talking point for us in this series. How will the focus look like for these 2 picks specifically? Now, right now, there are very few jungle-specific bans. Actually, a lot of mid lane directed bans. And something we also considered was, how big is the pool for pairing in the mid lane?
Yeah, and Lissandra, of course, has been his most played champion by far during the regular season. And for SK Gaming to enable Selfmade, having a strong mid laner for Pyrion is so important. That's why, with the Lissandra banned away, they snap lock in the LeBlanc to secure that strong mid-jungle 2v2.
But it does give Splyce a lot of options for a counter pick if they can find one. Now, Morgana has been locked for Splyce straight away.
And I think this is a mid-lane Morgana. We've seen it up against the LeBlanc. It was the OG counter pick all the way back in the day at MSI 2015 up against Faker. His undefeated LeBlanc back in the day, and it's so strong at just neutralizing and nullifying the impact of that champ.
I also just think that it's a very strong flex pick. In the event that it doesn't go towards the LeBlanc, you can move it down towards the bot lane. I think that as a champion, she does very well against many of the current meta supports right now. Braum, Alistar, Thresh, her Black Shield is very effective against them, and with a Xayah, you can get a lot of pressure in that lane. And when we think about one of the weak points for Splyce, you know, arguably a point of attack where Kobe has often been struggling during the laning phase, I feel with that duo, you're already guaranteeing a strong 2v2.
Especially with this Xayah that has been buffed on the patch. At max rank under W, getting 20% extra attack speed, this champion priority is rising highly here, and you still have the option to pair it with something like the Rakan if you are lacking engage.
Well, there you are. You called it, and the Morgana is going to be in the mid lane. Unless we see some crazy flex up towards the top side of the map, this will be a Xayah Rakan down towards the bot lane, Morgana in the mid lane. And what we see from this engage is that Splyce, they already have solid engage. They have a pretty strong laning phase with the Xayah Rakan. They also have a decent mid game, and it's definitely gearing towards that team fight style.
Gearing towards the team fight and just putting all the eggs here in the Kabi basket because you have protection with the Rakan as well as the Morgana in the mid lane. Kabe should and will be the focal point of this Splyce composition come those team fights.
Now, I want to talk about some of the flexibility actually coming out here from SK. With the Jarvan pick, that could of course go towards the jungle, but could also be a top laner, and we're starting to see some top laners get banned out in the form of the cannon here from Splyce.
Interesting that Splyce would choose to ban that one away. Remember that they do get counter picks, so they will be able to guarantee a strong matchup towards the top side. What interests me about SK's pick is, or draft right now, is that it is very mid-focus. If we assume that LeBlanc and Jarvan is the mid-jungle duo, something you talked about, Ender, was setting up Pyrion to allow Selfmade to have a strong lane to play around. This is already gearing towards the playstyle that we're used to seeing from SK.
Yeah, I think they're actually in a really good spot at the moment for that mid-jungle 2v2, but actually looking at SK's bans here, I think they have a telling story because it's these champions that want to kite back in fights, that want to give protection for the backline. The Kindred and the Poppy, which Vizichachi has been very comfortable on so far, the split being removed, mean that Splyce have less options to peel for Kabe.
So Splyce have actually pulled a little bit of a tricky one here with the Urgot lot. Of course, that used to be only a top laner, but now we are seeing a little bit more in the jungle as well. So they still have hidden that top lane pick for last.
And Xerxes is a player that innovates new champions. While we have seen Urgot popping up in solo queue and around the world, I would not be surprised to see him take it in the jungle. We all saw Cadril play that champion a few weeks ago, but some key buffs to it have made it significantly improved in the jungle role and just all across the board. Its win rate went up 7% in solo queue, which is just absurd.
Definitely is. Ezreal is the next lock here for SK. Get themselves a safe-ish bottom lane, and then The Hecarim last. Expect that to be seen up towards the top side.
Now, we saw this band pretty consistently in yesterday's series, but what's great about seeing it today is Whirlib was an OG Hecarim top lane player. Back in the days, the early seasons of when he played in the original EU LCS, this was one of his staple picks, and now he gets his hands back on it after the big buffs that we saw on 9.6 Ender.
And now with Gangplank being locked in, that will indicate it is going to be an Urgot in the jungle here for Cersei. So once again, going for more of a scaling pick on the side of Splyce, they're looking for the later stages of the game, whereas SK have more tools to play early.
Early on, we set the expectation that Splyce had a stronger bottom lane than they usually would. They kind of mitigated some of their weaknesses down there. SK have played around this strong 2v2 mid. Is that how those drafts have now played out, or do you see something new coming out from these teams?
I think they absolutely have, especially on the side of SK. I think they went for exactly what they wanted to, because you have very safe bot lane with the Ezreal, which Crown Shot is comfortable on, and the Braum. And what that means is Selfmade can sort of ignore this bottom lane, play entirely around Pyrian in the mid lane, which against Morgana may be hard to get kills, but use that to unlock Pyrian to roam up towards this top lane and really punish the Gangplank. Gangplank can be shut down so hard by strong early game junglers.
Yeah, what I'm really surprised about is this Gangplank pick. This does suggest to me that they may even leave topside, just leave him alone to farm and actually invest more resources.
Do the Blippo.
The bot, exactly that. Just invest all their resources into the bot side of the map, use the Gangplank ultimate to potentially set up a dive, use that ultimate to also mitigate some of the split push power that Hecarim will have as the game progresses. And he does contribute a fair amount in terms of the team fights that we're expected to see later on. But in terms of early game presence, until level 6, I don't think Splyce have many tools to really create opportunities, especially against an Ezreal Braum. And I think SK, they've drafted very safely and smartly. It's difficult to dive this Ez Braum lane. They have a lot of mobility with the Morgana, and I think that with this scaling Hecarim pick, SK right now are set up for a lot of successful early game opportunities.
Feels like it's a story of a map split down the middle. SK will play towards the top side, Splyce will play down towards bot side. It has been 1,444 days since SK Gaming were in the playoffs. Splyce have made the last 6 in a row. Couldn't be a bigger story of inexperienced rookies versus the old dogs of our league. And the question is, which team will come out on top today? I do believe we have a pause getting straight on into the game, so we get a little bit more time to break down and maybe set some expectations for people watching at home as to exactly how this early game is going to play out.
Yeah, and I think everyone's eyes will be immediately drawn to Selfmade, because this is the obvious early game playmaking jungler here with the Jarvan alongside him. And specifically, you have to look at how does he path here in the early game. And one thing that Jarvan can especially do up against the Urgot is look for early Scuttle Crab control, because Urgot, he needs some time to rank up his levels. Once he gets his W to max rank, he can farm pretty well. It becomes a toggle. It's great for the Urgot. But early levels, Selfmade will have control over this jungle matchup, and that's where I want to see him be a little bit more proactive, look towards mid lane, and more especially top lane to get the ball rolling.
So a couple unique things that I do see that's quite interesting. First is teleport on the LeBlanc. Not very conventional. Usually she likes to run things like Ignite because you often play to try and get the lane ahead or to have kill threat in a side lane. But mainly you do it for the Morgana matchup because of how oppressive she is. We might not have time for that as we see a bit of a level 1 shenanigans. Ward invested towards the bot side.
Crown Shot was in the right position to spot it out, and of course very safe on the Ezreal early on. Has taken the Mystic Shot, so if someone does get caught, it wouldn't be the easiest escape for them, but Splyce just forced back early on here by SK.
But the other interesting thing that I noticed is actually press the attack on Urgot. Now, normally we see the Conqueror, and very common that we've seen from many solo queue players that like to run that. It's very easy to stack on the Urgot, especially with the changes made to his W. I'm curious as to what you think about the press the attack.
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that I prefer the Conqueror a little bit more, especially because when you look at Urgot, you think more of a scaling champion, so the true damage later on in the game is going to be much more appreciated. But what Urgot can do is stack the press the attack very quickly with his W, which, as we said before, is going to be your first max in the jungle. It's a little bit different than the top lane Urgot we were used to seeing a few patches ago, because now with 5 points in the W, the rapid fire auto attacks coming through becomes a toggle. So there's actually no cooldown on that spell, and that makes him very potent when it comes to dueling at level 9.
Yeah, and you'll also notice that there is a Glacial Augment on the Morgana. That extra bit of utility really helps against someone as mobile as has a LeBlanc. So for anyone that may be interested in this matchup, it's a cool keystone that you can run to help out.
And when you see the Glacial Augment, because we've seen it a little bit, especially in solo queue a few months ago, you think, well, do you go for items like the Hextech GLP to get that extra slow field whenever you press it down? And I think that's actually a really good option for Humanoid in this game, because looking at the entire composition of Splyce, they do have some engage tools with the Rakan and maybe a Gangplank ult as well, but they're not super hard engage. And if they could get that extra slow from long range, that will give them more playmaking tools if they see an opening.
Yep. And
we did wonder if Selfmade would get control over both of the Scuttlecrafts. It looks like actually Xerxes gets the bottom side one, whereas Selfmade gets the top, splitting the map down the middle as we kind of expected. But the question for me is how much we're going to see Selfmade actually gank in this early game. How often is he going to be able to get his team ahead?
Well, right now he just saw Xerxes path over this blue ward at the moment, so he knows Xerxes is on the red buff. He can actually loop around, avoid the vision of this Gangplank, and look for an early kill. Remember, Werlib has Ignite.
The fight here as Chachi lands the barrels, but Selfmade coming in from the side. Chachi still has the flash, doesn't use it yet. Slowed down with the red buff. Werlib still on the chase, but no flash to chase, and Chachi can just walk away from the gank in the top lane.
Now, Hecarim had a point in his Q and his W, and because of his Chachi hit level 3, and Werlib is still on level 2, he didn't actually have his charge, so wasn't able to add that extra CC to try and burn a summoner spell from Gangplank.
It was also really unfortunate that Vizicachi just hit level 3, because he then had the oranges available as well, so the red slow meant that he could get away. Now, the problem with this gank from Selfmade is, sure, early on, if it had worked out, it would have been great, but it also gives Xerxes the option to just move into the enemy jungle and get a bit of vision down. He very wisely, though, doesn't commit to the steal because he recognized that his mid laner doesn't have priority yet. And this matchup doesn't really start going in favor of the Morgana until she has 3 points in that Tormented Soil and can start just immediately wave clearing those caster minions so that she then starts having that constant push.
We said it was going to be a story about the jungler. Selfmade here to try and counter gank Xerxes, who did come in, but Werlib now, with that devastating charge, can just run away.
Now, I think we should point out here the itemization early on here from Werlib, because one of the biggest weaknesses of Hecarim in the laning phase is he just soaks through mana. By spamming his Q in lane to clear waves and go for trades, he actually loses it a lot, so he's bot lane.
Robert has to flash away, gets a lot of damage down with the feathers, but it's first blood to crown shot. They'll trade it. Norscaven gets one in response, but a lot of action already going down in this bottom lane.
Yeah, we'll have to see the replay of that one more time to figure out exactly what happened. But you can see, you know, a bot lane Ezreal bomb should take it slow, but they didn't care. They wanted to go right on it.
Ooh, Norscaven actually mistimes the knock up there. Uses the Battle Dance to get away, but as you said, it's bad. He takes quite a bit of damage in response, levels up, and will heal it up pretty easy.
So we're actually going to see a pretty uncharacteristic mistake from the duo of the Splyce bot lane, largely because there's a bit of a communication error. And the one thing that I really want to draw people's attention to when the replay comes up is actually what Norscaven is doing while Kobe is trying to push in the wave. And something that we saw last week against the Fnatic G2 match was when Promiscu was trying to get vision in the Tri-Brush. What ended up happening was the Cassio perks would then try and push forward, and they didn't have pressure in the lane. So when we see, keep your eyes on what Norscaven is doing, he's moving up to try and get some vision on the Tri-Bush, and this actually gives a window for Crown Shot to go in for a trade when Kobe doesn't actually have that much mana. So he's immediately forced to back away because Crown Shot and Dreams are in the better position to go for that trade, and they end up getting that first blood kill.
Yeah, you can also see there how Kabe thought in the 1v1 he had the damage advantage, but as soon as Braum has the ability to jump forward onto a Zai that's basically melee range on the Ezreal, it's not going to be good news for Kabe.
A little bit difference in the support summoner spells as well. You have heal on the side of Braum and ignite on the side of the Rakan, so if you get the heal out earlier, you do just have that little bit more effective health.
Now, a difference in support pathing after that early reset is that Dreams actually walked through this mid lane to drop down a control ward, which unfortunately Xerxes is going to be contesting, and with the W can quickly clear away. But that's something we see a lot from Dreams, maybe looking for these roams, looking to set up some vision, whereas Norscaven was more focused on just getting back to the bottom lane, because when you're the second support to reset, it becomes a lot harder to actually face check into the river when there could be a jungler and a support on the other side there.
There's actually a lot of really cool item stuff that I wanted to quickly touch on as well. With the Morgana mid, what people may have noticed as well is that she's going for the double Dark Seal very early on. That's because her whole goal is not to win this matchup. It's just to wave clear, sustain, and just mitigate everything that LeBlanc tries to do, which is be a lane bully, look for those kills. And when she has this much sustain with the Corrupting Potion and Dark Seal combo, on top of the fact that she has a Black Shield, she has the Tormented Sword for wave clear, she's pretty much impossible to kill. And so even if Selfmade and Pyrion try to invest all these resources resources into shutting her down, it's just very, very difficult. So you're now looking at the kind of limited number of options, and really, for SK, they only have the ability to gank towards topside, which is why Xerxes is spending so much time here trying to get this vision, clear up whatever he can, and give Visitachi the freedom to leverage the often weaker early game that a Hecarim has.
Yeah, I think that Xerxes has been doing actually a really good job. I like that you bring that up. And now I look towards the side of Selfmade, and specifically the level 6 coming through for Whirlid, because now is when top lane is maybe a little bit more gankable.
100%,
of course,
yeah.
Chachi will always have the ability to use the orange and cleanse away from the fear that Whirlid can bring through. But if you actually just use the ult on Hecarim to position yourself behind the gangplank while you have your charge running, you can knock him back, and the CC removal really won't be effective if you just displace him.
And the reason we bring so much attention to Selfmade and we talk so much about him even on the analyst desk is he has been the key catalyst for SK throughout this entire split. You can see he has high jungle proximity, he's near his team in the early game, he's participating in 82% of their kills before the 15-minute mark, and he's the guy that really puts SK in a very strong spot.
Yeah, he often does. And one of the things I always praise him for is I think that his ability to make ganks successful is very high. He often finds kills. The thing that I often criticize him for is I often question why he's ganking certain lanes, because it feels like that he just sees an opportunity and goes for it, rather than this is the best lane for me to invest time and resources into. And we had that whole joke at the beginning of the split where every game he would gank Whirlid would play Poppy or Sion. Yeah, it doesn't matter. He's determined to make those ganks happen.
Which is surprising too, because in a game like this, it's like, wow, the gangplank, that's a lane you actually really want to gank. But he hasn't quite been able to find his mark on the top side of the map. Now, bottom lane is maybe a potential option as well, because there's no flash on Kave. Remember, he lost that earlier.
Both junglers are level 6 as well. You can see Xerxes sneaks into this bush, but there is a ward spotting him out. It looks like Selfmade's clearing out a ward of his own. Control in that bush just up into the river. Norscaven will replace that once again, and Xerxes will spot out the fact that he was seen on some SK vision.
Now, when we see junglers rotating down into this bottom lane and no teleports on either top laner, it's important to remember the strength and utility of the cannon barrage coming in from the side of Splyce. So in any given 3v3 on the bot side of the map, Splyce are always going to have an advantage because of that global split.
Feels like both junglers have done a pretty good job of mirroring the other throughout this early game. Xerxes especially, we've seen Selfmade go up towards top lane a couple of times, and Xerxes been there ready to respond. It's only 10 minutes in, or 9 minutes in, and across the board seems pretty even. Now, I feel like we set up the expectation that SK wanted to try and get this 2v2 mid ahead. They wanted to get Pyrian roaming, and they haven't quite been able to do that yet.
No, they haven't been able to do it yet, but looking at what SK are actually trying to accomplish in this game, we do say they get outscaled, and I think in a 5v5 that may be true, but you see a LeBlanc and a Hecarim, and you wonder, can they accomplish things in side lanes? Because you have TP on the LeBlanc, she's traditionally a very strong side laner, and that's where I doubt it a little bit on the side of SK, because I think Gangplank can very easily just clear waves up against the Hecarim, and I think Morgana can do the same thing as well. So SK don't feel like they drafted themselves nearly as many options as the side of Splyce.
And I think it was this Morgana pick that kind of limited their options, because it was very evident to me that they were trying to play around mid and they had options to do so, but it is so difficult to kill this Morgana. Now, I don't think like SK are limited in options right now. I still think that they can look to play around top, but the other big thing is how easy it is for a Hecarim to roam around the map. He is very mobile. You can see that he's already upgraded his boots to the tier 2 early on, right? And what this means is that he already looks for a roam mid. And once he's got on ideally he wants to complete the Phage, or just that first item, so he has a bit of extra damage as well, but don't be surprised to see this Hecarim just looking for roams mid, looking for roams with Selfmade, and trying to utilize his mobility to create an opportunity, find a kill, and then go back to lane.
And now that we see the laners hit that level 6, level 7 mark as well, those roams can be that much more explosive. You know, if you get down towards the bottom lane, you have a Braum Ezreal follow-up there. If you get towards Pyrian, he can do a huge amount of damage with the double distortion or the double sigil. So expecting to see SK try and make some of those roams happen around the map, where Splyce seem to be happy just tracking the enemies and keeping in their lanes.
They certainly are, and I think it is worth bringing up this Urgot once again here for Xerxes, as he has finished his warrior enchantment. This is something we see as Whirlid walks over all the wards in that river looking for a roam. But for Xerxes, one of the big changes on Urgot is actually the shield on his W moving over towards his E and getting a bonus AD ratio. And that means that in the jungle especially, it becomes very easy to itemize for AD with the warrior, Black Cleaver, even a Guardian Angel is a viable option. That makes him very potent. Oh my god!
Base check straight in, the spell shield's not going to save you. Self-Made gets the kill, and SK will fight around the Inferno. Splyce didn't have vision down towards the bottom side of the river, but maybe they want to go for a little bit of a Barney in the river. Inferno resets. Norscaran still has the ultimate and the flash.
And while this sort of dance around the dragon is happening, Pyrion was able to push out that mid lane, and without Morgana, no one's there to respond. Xerxes is going to try to steal.
Norscaran goes in, Self-Made gets it. Xerxes with the fear beyond death, but the stopwatch from Dream stops it in its tracks. There's a true shot barrage as well, doesn't quite connect, but SK get the dragon, and that's all they wanted. They get out.
Oh, there's a kill top lane!
And the solo kill top lane. Beautiful stuff there from Whirlip as well. SK finding advantages across the board.
So we're going to see that play top lane again, I should hope. But what I think happened is Vizicachi used the cannon barrage bot lane. He wasn't looking at his own model. He was trying to get the ult to zone away SK and stop them from finding the engage, and Whirlip absolutely pounced because look at the summoner spells. Chachi didn't even burn his flash.
And we see it happen with people like Shen as well. You stand united down to a fight and you just get caught out. Maybe that is what occurred up towards that top lane, but all we really know right now is that Whirlip now very much in control of that 1v1 matchup.
You actually predicted it to a T. I just went back, had a quick look back. He was standing there for a good couple of seconds, watching the bot lane, not respecting the ability for Whirlip to stack up that Q, and once it was stacked up, that's where the damage really started to come through and get those outplays. But the big concern for me was the fact that Humanoid just face-checked at the beginning of that fight. And we'll start off by looking at this replay in the 1 versus 1, and you'll notice it, he's just standing here looking bot lane, uses the ultimate, so now you're building up these rampage stacks, and Hecarim now got 2 off, 3 off, he lands the ult, he still hasn't used his E, so while this is a good stopwatch from Vizicachi, ultimately there's still enough damage from the side of Whirlip to be able to get the kill and walk away, which is a big deal for the Hecarim, because now you'll notice that he's picked up both the Sheen and the Phage.
Yep, got a lot of items working towards that Trinity Force now. Splyce moving every single member up towards the top side of the map, but Whirlip able to spot it out, and now they're looking for the full lane swap. After Gangplank goes down, Splyce say, we can push these towers very, very quickly. And actually SK are trying to respond because it's Crown Shot who's not trading plates in bot side. He's roaming up because they want to attack the mid lane.
Have to remember the towers get more tanky the more people there are around them when those turret plates fall. The Bulwark comes out and just makes it very hard to take them down, but with Demolish, SK are going to look for some plates in the mid lane for themselves. So it's going to be actually a pretty even trade between the two teams.
And I really like this trade here for SK if they can make the towers go neutral, because opening up this middle lane, especially if they can maybe rotate into a Herald play and use that to eventually break this tower, unlocks the entire map. It basically means that every time you push minion waves down mid lane, the other team has to wait a couple extra seconds before they can start clearing them, because they have to stand under their second tower, and you have all this time to move into the enemy jungle, put down wards, and set up for the objectives that will be spawning.
Now, you'll see that SK have responded by moving multiple members up towards the top side. I don't think they needed this many people, because now you've got both your top laner and AD carry in the same lane for no real reason. And one of the big things that did just occur was that Kobe was actually at a huge deficit. After dying in lane, he actually fell behind in farm, and Crown Shot was already building a gold advantage just from running Kleptomancy. So he actually already had a pretty big golded lead, but the fact that Kobe got so many plates and was able to secure the first tower of the game, but he's now closed that gold gap pretty significantly, and that's helped him a lot more get back into the game and work towards that first core item. As once again we see a bit of trading down towards the bot lane.
Looks like it's going to be okay for the moment as well. It just forces Chachi back. You guys voted for Self-Made to be featured in our first POV stream of the best of 5. You can check it out at twitch.tv/RiotGames2 or on the YouTube channel LOL Esports.
And one of the things I just wanted to quickly backtrack to is that whole Drake fight, I think, from the side of Splyce, just wasn't ideal in its entirety, because when we think about this composition, sure, they do have a strong team fight capability later on, but early on, there's no need for them to try and force a fight. I could see them maybe trying a dive bot lane at level 6, maybe, but against Bromezra, we talked about it, it's very dangerous, but like, they didn't need to. And the fact that Humanoid phase check, they still tried to challenge for the Infernal, they were just kind of asking for disaster. And it was just giving SK more opportunities to force fights when LeBlanc and Jarvan are really at their strongest.
Definitely did. We are almost 16 minutes into this game. Just want to have a look at the gold differential. About 400 between the two teams. We are getting those first items completed as well. It is a GLP for Humanoid on the Morgana. That's what we talked about. Luden's Echo already finished for Pyrion in that mid lane as well. And of course, Crown Shot going for the single tier Ezreal build here, as you can't build 2 tiers anymore. Yeah,
you can't get the double up anymore, which means we're scaling on the side of Ezreal. And traditionally, that was always sort of a weakness of that pick up until the introduction of that double tier build. Still, SK not necessarily looking to scale themselves, whereas Splyce certainly are. And I think that them hitting their 1-item breakpoints here with the Trinity Force now for Gangplank as well, and the Warrior Enchant for Xerxes are going to put them in a good spot to try to neutralize this game. But with SK seeing a Rift Herald and an Infernal Drake spawning in 20 seconds, I think that SK should be looking to find these fights around these objectives that are spawning.
Right now, it feels like SK have quite a lot of power in the pocket up here in. Crown Shot at 2 items as well can be very deadly on the Ezreal. Also, you've got Whirlip, who's very hard to deal with in the side lane. Splyce trying to react, trying to respond with some vision of their own, but it looks like SK might be taking the fight here. Dreams face check straight into Humanoid. The binding gonna connect. Puts down the Unbreakable. Here comes Northgaren from the side with the charm, but Whirlip's on his way up. Humanoid already killed Dreams, but Northgaren falls as well. Whirlip gets onto the back line, and Humanoid with a great Soul Shackles will catch him out. Stuns him up. Humanoid has to flash the wall, and now SK. Oh, a superb play call.
Oh, Chachi!
And Chachi jumps in with a parlay. Churchy there on the front line, Xerxes there on the front line as well, and Splyce have forced SK back into their own jungle.
Splyce had the item breakpoints, and they found the perfect fight. Playing off of CC and stuns onto one member, they were able to fight front to back, take it slow, and ultimately come out on top. Still, it is self-made with a flash up, with a smite up, and looking to steal.
Xerxes has the level advantage, and he will get the dragon. Self-made flashes out of the back, and Splyce equalized that dragon score, 1 Infernal to 1.
He also used the spear there to try and combo down with a smite, which meant he didn't have the EQ combo to escape from the pit, and loses his flash, which is going to be a big engage tool for the side of SK.
Some of the big things that I really liked with how Splyce set up that fight was they actually set up a lot of visional denial beforehand. They were ready on contesting this Drake beforehand, and we talked about how they didn't want to fight the Drake earlier, but now with the item breakpoints, they were in a much better position to do so. I think the way they set up for it was very good as well, because the fact that they were lying in Fog of War, because they actually have a surprising amount of pick potential, means that the moment someone face checks, it's very difficult for them to escape. And that whole fight kicked off because Dreams decided to face check the brush, and then the ensuing fight immediately followed. And SK, they just weren't in a position to react.
Yeah, I think how they crafted the ideal team fight right there was really good, because yes, it is that initial burst damage with the Morgana, the Urgot as well, but then you can see the slow fields they create with the GLP and the Cannon Barrage as well, just making it very hard for SK to actually step forward and protect that one member that is getting zoned away. So Splyce don't actually have to risk themselves to layer down that CC. Instead, they can keep players like Kabe and Vizichachi very far in the back line, stay relatively safe, and never get hit by the dive and the threat of SK.
Now, it looks like once again SK trying to set up some vision control at least around one of these objectives, but Northgaren always has that engaged potential. We've seen Makan's jump from almost across the map just to get onto that backline, and you can see how much respect SK are giving towards Splyce right now.
Now, something I need to quickly bring up is the itemization for Crown Shot. He has a lost chapter as an inventory, which was traditionally to funnel into that next tier to get the CDR and get towards stacking. Now, oh my god, wait a second.
Just melted underneath the tower. Whirlip gets the 1v1. 2 tower shots, 1 more would be enough, but it doesn't even connect. Whirlip with a pure 1v1 outplay in the bottom lane.
Whirlip demonstrating how strong this Hecarim can be as the game progresses. The longer you get, once you've got that Trinity Force completed, you are such a strong duelist, and this is why I had some question marks around the Gangplank pick. Can you hold the Gangplank in the side lane? And right now, Whirlip is proving that Vizichachi can't.
Here we go! He's going to force the 4v4. The charm comes out. They root up one. It's Dreams. Crown Shot jumps across the wall. Over here comes Pyrian. Baby on death will knock him back as Xerxes locks him up. Crown Shot down to Kobe. Pops the feathers and manages to survive. Eventually dunked down by Self-Made. Northgaren now across the wall. Will be forced away as well, but Splyce come out on top in the fight.
Kobe went full beast mode in that team fight, getting the first kill, flashing over the fight, singling out Crown Shot, and almost surviving. Splyce clean up house, get the tower, and have complete control of this top side of the map.
And it was such a big fight as well because Whirlip didn't have his teleport to join in, which means that Splyce knew they could guarantee the 4v4 where they felt stronger. You can see Crown Shot here, he gets caught out. The binding gets absorbed by Dreams. Good support there, keeping his AD carry alive, but Kobe was like, no, we're not having any of this. Flashes into the backline, shuts down the AD carry immediately, and then with the fight split up, there's little that SK can do to turn it around in their favor.
That was the most important part. Splyce singling out those 2 members and immediately punishing them. While Self-Made was trying to take the Herald, SK didn't have the grouping needed to try and fight back against that comp, and that's why you can see Kobe flashing into the backlines, because that usually should never happen.
And when we think about win conditions now, we think about how are both these teams looking to try and win these games. Splyce will want to try and create more of those scenarios. They want to have these kind of 4v4 situations, maybe even 5v5s, because they know and they feel not only confident in their team fighting, but their composition is better designed to work in those environments. Whereas SK, the question comes, even if Splyce want to force the 5v5s, maybe they can actually come out on top considering how strong Whirlip actually is on this Hecarim, and he's no slouch in the fights either.
Crown Shot gets the slow onto Chachi there, but he'll use the Powder Keg to get some movement speed and away. You can see Splyce actually just being that little bit more aggressive, stepping up a little bit further than they would have done a couple of minutes ago, and with about a 2,000, 1,500 gold lead, they're in actually a very good spot. SK aren't out of it yet, but Werlib might be caught out. Xerxes just waiting until Werlib goes in, can use that devastating charge to get away, dodging around as much as he can, goes in onto Chachi. Xerxes will knock him back with the disdain, and the fear beyond death just pulls him in. It's a very delicious pony.
Very good bait there from Vizichachi walking forward. And Werlib, I think we could sense that he knew something was going wrong there, but Xerxes waiting in the wings, able to find that kill, and all of a sudden, this side lane win condition for SK is being shut down. Yes, he has found 2 solo kills up against Vizichachi, but the question is, can he actually get turrets in side lanes? Because if he can't, SK have to play a team fight game, and the way that has been going so far this game, they've found mixed results.
Definitely have Splyce been able just to wait out the pressure that comes from Werlib and get Kobe onto this 2-item spike. You've got Chachi now sitting at 2 items as well. Twin Shadows out from Humanoid to provide even more zone control, even more chase potential in these team fights. And that's, I feel, really the story of Splyce's team fights. Their zone control is so powerful. You have Norscarin diving on the backline. You've got Humanoid with the ability to catch someone out.
And now there's no Hecarim with them at the moment. SK are trying to walk into the river, but they don't have the front line.
It's only a power drink. They almost take down Norscarin straight away. They do get in the Vivian. That's been used here as well. Dreams will fall as well, but a great true shot barrage. Xerxes running away. There's the teleport. Onslaught of Shadows is available for Werlib if they want to go for the chase. Crown Shot looking for some slows. Werlib going in with a devastating charge. Is he going to go any further? Decides against it. 1-for-1 trade.
Norscarin got obliterated at the start of that fight, and I feel like when we praised Splyce for their setup around the Drake earlier, this time round, SK were in a much better position. While I do feel the teleport could have come out a little bit sooner from Werlib, ultimately the fact that they could turn this into a 1-for-1 was because of the vision placement that they had, and they were in a much better position to react to those kind of picks coming out from Splyce at the beginning of the fight.
And ultimately, I don't think SK had a ton of confidence coming into the fight, and that's why we didn't see the immediate TP. But here you go. Norscarin gets immediately destroyed and taken out, but there's nowhere really for Dreams to go. And now you ask the question, can SK channel through? Crown Shot says, yes, I want to go into the back line, but without the Hecarim getting there a couple seconds sooner, it's just not going to happen.
I want to give some credit to Crown Shot. He jumped away from the Rakan engage there as well. Twin Shadows used. Perion will know that there's someone just around the corner, but isn't going to be caught out too easily on that LeBlanc. Don't face check into Xerxes. There's the GLP. Slow comes out, Binder connects, and now Xerxes can go in with the disdain, knocks him back. Perion stunned up, pulled back into the grinder, and Xerxes on a rampage. 4-0 on this Urgot jungle.
That's just so gross right there. Perion didn't have the flash, didn't have the mimic, so as soon as he presses the W, going to get immediately destroyed, and it's Xerxes and Humanoid working around the vision of SK to find a pick on the side laner.
I'm just keeping my eyes on the items right now. What kind of break points are we reaching? The Sterix have now been completed for Werlib. He's pretty much going to be unstoppable on the 1v1 on a side lane, but the Sterix has also been completed for Chachi as well, so let's give him a little bit more survivability to buy a little bit more time, but he has to be so careful pushing up this far in a side lane because Werlib, with the Ignite, more than happy to go for those 1v1s every time.
Look at this from Splyce, actually starting up the Baron, and with Dreams recalling, there's not many easy ways to get vision in the river.
Werlib's in the bottom lane as well without teleport, so they know that they're going to be in at least a 5v4 situation. Self-made spots out, Norscarin.
He can't get in.
The Baron's going to go down. True Shot Barrage coming out. Still at 4,000 HP. Should be an easy enough secure here for Splyce. Xerxes will secure it, and that is a great Baron take. 25 minutes in from Splyce.
It's just a brilliant sneak there from Splyce, playing very proactively here throughout the mid game, and it starts with Xerxes. He found 2 picks on both side laners of SK. They're able to transition that into the Baron because they know without Perion alongside them, SK are actually very hard pressed to walk into the river. They saw the resets coming through from multiple members and said, hey, we've got Urgot, Xayah, we could just smash this.
And I just want to bring attention as well to the fact that it's not the 1v1 that's defining this game anymore. Before, it was Werlib getting advantages, pushing Chachi back, but it really feels like Splyce are able to mitigate Werlib in a side lane and then just force these team fights, force these plays on the other side of the map.
And it's a problem we see so frequently from split push comps, whether they're 1-3-1 or 1-4. It's that, yes, you win the 1v1, quote unquote, but you actually can't knock down towers. And without the ability to influence turrets, knock those down, eventually threaten an inhibitor, you actually don't don't accomplish anything in the sideline.
And I want to quickly go back and look at how Splyce set up this Baron so cleanly. So what you can see overall on the map right now is that all this vision has been set up towards the top side. Remember that they've just killed LeBlanc. So they're able to walk in and challenge for this. The problem for SK is the only vision they have is around here as another fight kicks off.
Selfmade jumps in with the Cataclysm. Norscarin jumping away. The True Shot Frost comes out as well. Kobe waiting just around the corner, but not actually going to be able to find the engage. Now Chachi's come down and joined this fight. Pyrian jumps onto him, lands the chains as well, but Chachi will flash the wall, uses the oranges to get to safety. Splyce still feels a little bit like they're hankering for a fight here. Norscarin going to go in with the charm, but doesn't connect on anyone. He jumps back. The root lands onto Dreams. Once again, the Baby on Death will pull him back. He's done 1-0, and Splyce continue forward, stepping forward, straight in. The flash in from Xerxes straight up to the back line. That's 2. Splyce looking for a little bit more as they get the GOP, but Wallib has to use the ult defensively, and Splyce are just breaking down the structures of SK.
Splyce were able to completely split up SK in that fight. It's a beautiful engage in the mid lane. I don't even know why SK are there, but Splyce see the opportunity, playing for the fight, and they get the inhib.
SK don't have the defense to hold on to the line. Splyce have all 5 members. They have a cannon minion as well. They could look to end the game right now.
Got the Baron buff there. Selfmade just pulling the minions away, trying to delay all of this from Splyce. It looks like Splyce will accept that they cannot get it yet, but 27 minutes in the game, they are 7,000 gold ahead. They have broken through this inhibitor line, and they did not wait for the late game. They didn't wait for scaling. They just waited out a little bit of early game pressure, and then they exploded onto SK.
So the crucial thing here is that the fight actually starts a little bit earlier, where SK tried to force a fight onto Splyce. They had really good vision around the top side of this map, and they thought they could get a pick onto Norscarin. This then forced them into a grouped up situation where Splyce could then convert it into a team fight. And while Norscarin misses the initial ultimate, in this Anywhere replay, what you saw was Splyce were able to force the 5v5 and just run it through SK.
And the question now becomes for SK, how do you deal with this? You have super minions pushing in mid, your team fight just isn't as strong as Splyce, who can just push you around the map, and Splyce continue to find advantages, especially through Xerxes, who has been all over the map this game.
Xerxes just constantly looking to punish the solo players on the side of SK. Now you can see Splyce have complete control over this top side map. Multiple players pushing down that middle lane, escorting the minion waves in, while Xerxes and Chachi can look to knock down more and more towers. Now what Splyce is going to be doing for the remainder of this Baron buff is not looking to end the game, but to see, can they get a second inhibitor? And if they can, it makes the next Baron oh so easy, and the close from there a piece of cake.
They will break the tower in the top lane, continue just to eke out that advantage. 7 turrets to 3 for them now. There is an Ocean Drake if they want to get that as well, but don't really need that one right now. Selfmade was jumped on by Norscarin, but dodged away from the ground entrance, and Norscarin will just dance his way around. Let's have a quick look at itemization here. You can see Infinity Edge finished on towards Copy. He's at 3 items. Crown Shot, instead of going for the Hextech Gunblade, decided on the Luden's Echo, 3rd item on Ezreal.
So what this will bring for Crown Shot is 40% CDR, which is very, very valuable on the Ezreal. I'll be honest, it's not something I've seen a lot of going for the Ludens after the changes. I've seen a lot of people actually going back towards the Blade of the Ruined King, or if they want to be more AP focused, the Gunblade. But what this will mean for Crown Shot is I think for the rest of his build, he should be looking for more magic damage, maybe the Gunblade down the road, to give him more tools. It'll give him a lot of sustain off of his W and his E, as well as the rest of his attacks. But ultimately, it's going to be very hard now for SK to come back. I think they have to wait for more items here on the side of Ezreal and find the perfect fight, because going front to back is really difficult against Splyce.
I think the easiest way for SK to come back now is find a successful fight around the Baron. It spawns in about a minute's time, and Splyce are doing what they can to starve the vision out away from SK. You can see really good use of the sweepers to just push SK further and further back. Right now they can see little to nothing on the map. What does surprise me is how SK are Splyce rather investing so much towards the bot side of the map rather than the top side, because you would expect Baron to be the next big play, but Splyce are determined, like, you know what, we want to control the bottom side of the jungle right now instead.
Yeah, maybe just giving a little bit of protection here for Vizicachi, because in the event that SK don't think they can contest around the Baron, the play is go punish the side laner. But I do think they should look to rotate those control wards up. Pyrian looks for a little bit of poke here, but you can see so many control wards in the inventory of Splyce. Even though they've invested a lot bot side now, they can replace those and control the Baron, which is coming up awfully soon.
There's absolutely no vision in the inventory of SK right now. All the sweepers will be coming off cooldown relatively soon, but Splyce controlling the vision game extremely well, and you just spoke about it. SK just invested what little vision they have towards the bot side of the map, and now Morgana's rotated top. Yep. She's pushed out the wave, and now there's nothing really that Splyce need to worry about towards the top side because there is no vision here for SK, and this should be an easy setup for the next Baron for Splyce.
Yeah, SK just got totally baited. They have nothing in the inventory, hardly, and now Splyce move immediately towards the Baron. The True Shot Barrage came out, so SK do know what is going on, and Selfmade will be looking for the proper fight. They have teleport on Warlock.
They should turn.
They do turn straight onto him, but Selfmade flashes away. Pyrion now coming in from the side. Feather Storm.
Oh, this is huge!
Look at the damage, and already Humanoid is dead. Whirlim coming in with the Onslaught of Shadows. They'll get two as a shutdown for Pyrion. And now Xerxes caught out. Norscaven fighting Selfmade up towards the top side. Xerxes going to fall as well. It's another shutdown for SK. They're going to take 4 for nothing as Splyce started the Baron, but met their demise.
It's a miracle team fight for SK. Pyrion goes in right at the start and burns the defense from Kabe. He has nowhere to go from that point, and SK have found a way right back into this one.
And huge question marks for me with regards to Splyce. There was no teleport from Vizicachi. SK, they were able to just walk through all of that vision and get the ideal team fight. Norscaven engaging onto the Jarvan, who just completely avoids it. It felt like that Splyce, they felt like that they had this Baron free and the SK wouldn't contest, and when they did, they didn't know how to answer.
Yeah, it started with that big outplay from Selfmade, completely avoiding the engage, and from there, Splyce were just stuck inside of the pit. And I mean, the gold just about bang on even, and Infernal on either side. Now with the Gunblade finish from Crownshot, he got all the gold for that item. You start to see the hope here for SK Gaming.
Certainly do. They're in a much better position now. The Hecarim is still very strong. The Jarvan engages there. AP Ezreal will definitely hurt, or rather the hybrid build. And with the Baron buff, they're now setting up the siege. And you can also see Hecarim pushing out top, LeBlanc pushing out bot. Teleport is available for the LeBlanc should she need it. But now it is SK trying to gain vision control over Splyce's jungle.
We did say Splyce could match in these 1-3-1s with some of their wave clear, but obviously it's so much harder to clear when the enemy has the Baron buff. This tower in the mid lane should be short to fall. Double cannon wave pushing in, but maybe Splyce just going to group up as a 5 and look for the team fight. The tower goes down, still LeBlanc pushing in the bottom lane. Selfmade just waiting around the corner in the jungle here. Missed by the binding.
Now, because Humanoid went for the Glacial Augment, Splyce actually have very good anti-siege. They can use the cooldowns of Twin Shadows and GLP to make the slow zone and to force SK to back away from towers whenever the waves come up, but without members around mid, it could be tough.
Always have questions about where you assign your lanes. And Selfish just going in. Kobe called out, but he uses the Feather Storm to survive for the moment. He's down to the True Shot Barrage, and SK have somehow turned this around. Chachi jumped up by Whirlip on the backline. Xerxes trying to do what he can. Almost takes out Pyrion, but he'll escape. Norscaven low, Dreams low, but SK are the ones coming out on top. That's another kill for Whirlip. He gets a double, called out by Humanoid underneath the tower. Xerxes will knock him back, but the Sterak shield will keep him alive for the moment. Humanoid has to flash away, and still SK are the ones on the front foot.
Without Kabe, Splyce just don't have the damage. SK do not have much health on multiple members, but Pyrion teleports back in. They have a minion wave, and the death timers are oh so long for the side of Splyce.
Off a single call, SK could have turned this game straight on its head. They were back in their base, they were beaten and bruised, but somehow they've turned it around, and Splyce are now the ones defending their Nexus towers. It's all on Humanoid. He has to do it all here with
5
Xerxes
seconds on
coming in as
Kabe.
well. 5 seconds on Kabe, only a cannon wave there. Xerxes hits the Fear Beyond Death. They'll take down Dreams. They get a consolation prize, but for it, they lose so much.
Splyce hold the line for now, but they lose so much of their base in exchange. SK get a huge advantage off the back of this Baron. This is where things all start off. Kabe just trying to approach the wave, get some wave clear down, immediate engage from Selfmade. This guy doing what he's often known for, finding those plays. He lands it onto the crucial carry, and with him out of the way, it's simply a matter of cleanup for the side of SK.
And Splyce had dedicated 2 members to try and clear away the wave in the bottom lane. They got pushed and pulled around, and that gave the opportunity for the engagement there on the side of SK. And you can see Xerxes doing his best to try and keep his team in this game, to pull away the minion wave, to chunk out the players on the side of SK. And now with both bases shattered, 2 inhibitors down on the side of Splyce. SK have their inhibitor respawn, but Splyce want to find the pick.
Crownshot just teleported up towards the top lane here as well. Splyce know that they can try and make a fight here, but they're being collapsed on all four sides. Crownshot just melts Northscaven, but will he pay for it with his life? He will. That's him down, and now Selfmade's in the middle of 3 members of Splyce. Well, it comes in, joins the party, pops the onslaught of shadow, gets the knockback. Here comes Pivy and diving Humo, perfect stopwatch just in time. Pivy on death will take down 1, and Splyce now have 2. Selfmade almost caught out, he jumps across the wall, and Splyce in this game of inches come out on top.
And now it's Splyce being the proactive team, looking to catch SK off guard as just immediately following their reset. Notice how they don't sit in their base trying to wave clear, they just push out the waves, immediately head towards Baron. They know SK is going to the top side of the map, and so they just immediately force a fight. Great stuff from Splyce to get a couple kills and buy a little bit more time.
And on the other side of things, you look at SK, and this is a team that will take every single fight that looks like a 50-50. They are so confident, they feel that they can outplay you on neutral standing. But if you look at how that fight actually happened, Dreams wasn't there at the start. Whirlib was trying to run in, and Crownshot, while he completely nuked Northscaven, traded his own life for the support, and that's what enabled Splyce to win when there was no threat on Kobbe into the backline. If they can replicate that, if Kobbe can survive the initial burst, they win the 5v5.
Easy to forget with someone performing the way that Crownshot is, that he is still a rookie. The way that, like, Selfmade as well, still a rookie. Sometimes you get towards these playoff matches and maybe a little bit of a rush of blood to the head. You see you can catch out one, you think you can escape it, you pay for it with your life. We'll see if that trend continues throughout this game, but right now we are 100 gold apart. 37 minutes into the game. We have a Rabadon's complete on Pyrion. We've almost got a full build Morgana in the mid lane as well for Splyce.
It's at this point, the gold means very little. It's very much about execution when it comes to team fighting. And the one thing we've often said about Splyce is that when you get to this point in the game, they are very confident in their ability to fight. But SK, they're not afraid, and they will take those gambles. Now, the teleport is unavailable for Vizichachi. He's in the bot lane. Whirlib has his. Splyce have to respect the fact that they have no vision in the top side of their jungle, and Selfmade could be anywhere.
We're holding our breath, just like the Splyce players are as they rotate across here. Dream's trying to get some vision behind the tower there. Will be cleared out with that.
Oh, Cersei!
Cersei goes in, lands only onto Dreams. Once again, he steps in front of his AD carry, and he will go down. Northscaven still on the chase, can't quite catch up to Whirlib though. And SK will get out, only losing 1 man, but charging on the backside! And it's Crownshot who gets the kill. 1-for-1 trade as SK get a consolation prize at the back.
So a couple of crucial mistakes there from both sides. The first one, Crownshot using his E over the wall, but he has no idea that Cersei's in the bush. That is the signal to go from the side of Splyce, so Dreams has to sacrifice himself to protect his AD carry. Then Vizichachi for some reason comes in from the flank, and he ends up giving his life away as well. So now it's a 4v4, Pyrion is alive, and SK have started the Baron.
Cersei's still alive here, doesn't have the flash, there's no blast cone for him to get in either. SK still on that Baron, it's Whirlib and Selfmade who are doing it. Crownshot caught out, uses the scimitar to get away. Splyce still trying to find an avenue in here, trying to see if they can spot it out. Northscaven jumps in, Cersei with a fear beyond death. The Baron down so low, it gets secured, and it's Crownshot who gets it! Once again finding the pick, and SK come out with a Baron buff in their favor.
And SK don't look like they want to reset just yet either. They know there's still 10 seconds on Vizichachi, and with Cersei oh so low, they can look to knock down yet another tower. They can then reset. Elder Dragon is spawning in 50 seconds. Every single one of these engagements means so much for these two teams. You lose a fight with both teams having lost inhibitors on either side. There's no towers to protect those structures. It could just be one win and done.
What I find fascinating about this point in the game is SK, if they play their cards right, don't actually have to team fight Splyce to end this game. They have Hecarim LeBlanc, teleports are about to be available on both sides, and they can look to just 1-3-1 this game to victory. But we're going to quickly come back to this team fight. You'll see Crownshot. He should have died here if it weren't for Dreams. This guy has been doing this all game, soaking up those bindings to protect his AD carry, but we have another fight. Or we have Northscaven running away.
Northscaven gets away.
But then, yeah, we also saw Vizichachi just coming in from the flank for no real reason, and him losing his life means that even though Splyce find that pick, they can't really convert it into anything, and they end up losing the Baron.
And remember that it was Northscaven that was trying to put down the vision. He got forced out of the jungle, so Splyce are going to shove down mid lane and then look to collapse inside of their... They're grouped up as 5, and Crownshot is not with the rest of his team.
Crownshot has also sold his Luden's Echo to pick up a Bloodthirster now. A bit more sustain in these fights if he can get it. There's an Elder Dragon on the cards. Crownshot down towards the bottom side. Glacial Fissure used. They jump onto Humanoid who flashes away, but now Cersei caught out with a Concussive blows, Humanoid solo, the charm comes out, Humanoid still alive on the backline, Cersei will fall well and gets Humanoid, and he's still alive, and the rest of SK can come in here, because already they've taken down 2. Kobe tries to pull the feathers back, Pyrion low as well, forced away, but SK come out on top and they force Splyce away.
And look at Crouchshot, he's running straight for that bottom lane inhibitor while Selfmade and the rest of the team are avoiding. They're double TPing in, they must stop the bases, because right now there's one Nexus tower standing in the way of SK's victory.
Selfmade stops them in their tracks for the moment. Kobe, Norscaran, and Chache, it's all on you to defend, but Pyrion is already there, and with the Ezreal W, you can take that tower so easily. Whirled now on the Nexus, and in a game of inches, it looks like SK are the ones to strike first. The shutdown comes out from Crouchshot, and they were an inch away from losing, but SK take game 1.
Great way to start the series for SK. Getting a win on the board is a big deal for momentum. And they played those late game fights very, very well. A couple of small mistakes here and there, but still, the moment they found a small avenue back into the game, they grabbed hold of it, and they did not relent on the pressure against Splyce.
And it's the fashion in the way that they won, because SK just beat Splyce in a 41-minute game. We know Splyce, that is not an easy thing to do. Challenging them in the late game with smarter shot calling, with better team fighting, SK were able to come out on top.
And it felt like it was over. It was 27 minutes in. Splyce had just broken through the inhibitors. They'd even looked towards those Nexus towers, hadn't quite been able to get there, but then one fateful call around the Baron led to SK coming out on top, team fighting better than Splyce in a lot of scenarios as well.
And the thing is, this was Splyce's game to lose. They were in a prime position to win this game. We praised them so much for how they were setting up the vision. They had full control over the map. They had a 7k gold lead. Everything looked really, really good for Splyce. And then they just made that fumble around Baron. They just let SK walk into the Baron. They let them fight them in a 5 versus 4, and they ended up falling apart. And with the moment that happened, SK just took full control once again.
And it was not a typical mistake that we see Splyce make, because they're usually a safe team. They don't take risks. They don't take 50-50s. Well, that was a coin flip if I've ever seen one around the Baron. And with Whirlib coming in on the TP, SK were able to just completely blow them out of the water.
Yeah, well, for more on SK's win, let's check in with the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Medic. That was a nice little movement and fantastic moves by SK Gaming, who take a monumental first win versus Splyce in this best of 5. Very entertaining game to watch. Incredibly back and forth, and ultimately lost by Splyce, but we'll get to that in a second, I guess, because what I did find really interesting about the picks and bans is that yesterday, even though we were on 9.6, we didn't really see too much of it. You know, the Kale came in, but here we see a lot of champions that have been changed or been changed in the last couple of patches, saying to me that these teams definitely had good plans coming in.
Yeah, we definitely on the Splyce side had some of the older picks in new roles that we're starting to see more. A lot of it comes into flex picking. Obviously, when you take Morgana first, what we have seen now from a couple of teams in National Leagues, but also in other regions, you can move Morgana to the mid lane. So when they go Morgana early, they see the Braum pick on the other side. They know, okay, fine, we put it in mid, and we can then get a free Rakan pick because we're not going to get punished in lane, and then you get the best engaged support for later. And they did the same with the Urgot. They took it in the second phase without showing if it was going top or jungle, again, trying to give them an advantage.
And then on the other side, you've got the Hecarim top that was perma-banned yesterday that finally gets pulled out on Whirlib. Made it count in the end, although it was a little bit dicey in that lane phase. But as you were saying, Deficio, it's this idea of a kite back composition or a comp that wants you to dive on it with the Morgana versus the heavy dive, Jarvan, Ezreal, LeBlanc, Hecarim. SK had all of the tools to get to a backline and to blow up Kabe, which is why I also loved the brand new Xayah, you know, having that increased attack speed, that safety for Kabe to say, dive me, I dare you.
Yeah, and because of the way Splyce were picking in the first phase, they got to see LeBlanc and J4 early, so they knew, okay, there's a lot of threat here towards the backline. And again, that's when they decided to go for the double support setup with Rakan and Morgana as well, to try and protect Kabe for as long as possible.
And despite some early moves by SK Gaming, when it came to those first team fights in the mid game, it was Splyce that knew how to play their composition. They caught people out with the Morgana binding. The Hecarim really didn't do as much as we thought it would, I think, in these first couple of fights, and Splyce was able to get the upper hand.
Yeah, there were some big openings for Whirlib to try and take, but I think he's respecting the fact he's fairly squishy early, so he didn't want to risk it. But I think it is important to kind of highlight again what Frost was saying with the dive comp from SK with Java and Hecarim. If you combine the two, it's hard to protect against. But instead, it is Splyce like getting these picks here. Morgana landing bindings. And Crown Shot, obviously, on an Ezreal should not be getting caught out, which is giving a big lead over to Splyce.
Yeah, I know that Splyce didn't win the game, and ultimately that's going to hurt moving into the best of 5, but Kobbe had an incredible series. That guy played so well, and that replay just highlights some of the crazy plays that he was doing. And Crown Shot also struggled early on, but did pick it up in the end of the game. So I love what we saw from both these ADCs.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you highlighted there as well. I think from both teams, we saw some players that immediately were comfortable in that first game and just played to their old strengths, and some players who dropped the ball a couple of times, right? I think we haven't seen the peak performance of both these teams yet, but I think it's important to highlight that when it mattered the most, SK Gaming came out on top. So now, let's look at that Baron. Splyce is in control. Splyce took a very easy Baron beforehand. They think they can do it again. Where did they go wrong?
Well, they don't actually get self-made here, and they invest so much, and they get out of position when trying to get him. Binding doesn't hit, you know, he flashes out of the Rakan ulti, and now, for the first time, Splyce actually split up, and the dive comp from SK are able to find targets with Hecarim diving in there, but also Crown Shot, of course, being left completely untouched. This was the first time I feel like Splyce overforced by starting Baron, then splitting up, trying to get self-made, but not actually getting to him in time. And that gave the opening for Crown Shot to actually win the fight.
It was like time and time again when SK's composition finally was confident enough to pull the trigger on diving the backline. It was when Splyce were all grouped up around a dragon, around their own inhib, around the Baron, instead of on a long lane where they could use the Morgana to kite backwards, to kind of absorb what SK were throwing at them and then slowly walk them down and make ground.
And it didn't do that in the end. We're also going to take a look at the final fight, because even though it was a bit in between there for a while, SK Gaming do manage to pull the trigger at the end and get to their first victory. Crown Shot, by the way, is the guy flanking, not Hecarim.
And I know you had some issues with that black shield right there.
Yeah, don't put it on Rakan when the way you win the fights are actually, again, by protecting Kobbe or Humanoid for as long as possible. It's like long, drawn-out fights is what you're trying to play with Morgana mid, because all about her binding, sniping, and then W damage with missing HP. But the fact you put it on Rakan actually means you're left without a lot of defenses. And again, SK, they punish that because we know and Hecarim and Jarvan eventually will get there. And I also think at this point, they've started to get some tankiness, which actually makes it hard for this Xayah to kind of solo carry late game fights. And same thing with like GP not really ever getting into the game on the side of Vizicsacsi. I think he got an Infinity Edge maybe like 42 minutes. And he never really got to deal a whole lot of damage, as we saw on the graph here as well. So it was a lot on just Xayah. But now she has to kill 2 tanks, and she didn't have enough protection without a black shield, and then you can't really get him down in time, and SK wins.
It just kind of is like a hard reset on this game. What I found interesting is it played out to the idea that we expected that these were both team fighting oriented teams. It was going to be about team fights. And I know that there's like this reoccurring narrative of, like, you know, Splyce, the late game team, every single time. But the thing is that when you end up with long average game times, it means that your execution must be consistent. You must be consistently executing in these team fights, and it can be very small things. Who you black shield, if you actually nail that dive potential. And we have faith that Splyce, as the more veteran or established roster, very young in 3 of their players, Humanoid, Xerxes, as well as Norse Garen, but Humanoid and Chachi. But you were seeing that inconsistency, that misexecution. Chachi looking for a flank on the gangplank without having any damage and instantly getting blown up. And that's what I want viewers to really hone in on as this series continues. Who is making the mistakes? Under the pressure of playoffs, if we're going to see repeated team fights, who is finding that consistent damage? Who is getting the CC? Who is sniping who?
I think it's also important for viewers who's seeing Morgana mid now, again, to understand that the build that we're seeing from Humanoid, it doesn't scale very well. It is very focused, again, on the first 2 items where you have like Twin Shadows, slow effect with Glacial Augment. So like you're very much utility-based in that case. And then you have, again, % missing damage from your W if people are standing in it. But these very split-up fights, people are not standing in it. You're not getting a lot of damage from it. So once you hit this point late, with tanks as well in the front, it's not really about your mid laner anymore. And that's, again, the thing when you go too far into the game without Death Cap or Void Staff, Morgana really starts falling off. And we started seeing this as well after that Baron misplay by Splyce.
I also think it's a great example of the fact that you can prepare all you want, but you do have to withstand all the elements once you get into that game, and maybe it goes longer than you had previously anticipated. Now, if you take a step back, everyone but Quickshot of the people who voted for Splyce. We were very confident in their ability to pull it off. How has your trust wavered, and how much further do you think SK can go in this series?
I mean, personally, my prediction was 3-1 because I felt that the nature of these two teams coming down to team fights, it meant that there was a 50-50.
But did you think that game was going to be number one?
No, I will give you that. I did not think that Splyce would lose that game, but I thought someone will misplay a team fight around a Baron because it's team fight oriented, and that's how it would flip back, and that was what happened. But yes, I thought going in before that Baron that Splyce had this.
So how much does it change the kind of, expectations we have for the series? The fact that, yes, some of us had expected one game to be dropped, but that it is the first one. That you have those rookies who now know, hey, we can do this 2 more times, no problem for us.
I mean, I think it's very positive to see that SK in late game team fights are winning. Some of them like they did here, especially the most important ones towards the end. But I think if you are a big Splyce fan, no reason to panic yet, because you actually did look really good before that Baron fight. You were winning fights. We were kind of saying, wait, what's SK doing? They're very split up here. Hecarim not diving in. So at that point, we were like, okay, Splyce, they got the game. But you obviously got to be able to finish it, or finish the Baron before we can say you actually get the victory as well.
And likewise, I think that there were a lot of holes in SK's early game. We always praise Selfmade, but his early game pathing really messed up Warlib. That Hecarim should not be losing that matchup like he was to GP early. He should be about constantly spamming your Q, constantly having the way forward, and constantly chipping away at GP. But because they lost jungle priority, he had to play so far back. He was in a CS deficit, and he gave a free lane to a GP who should be dove pretty much every single time. Yeah, well, when he was looking at Dragon, but I was like, you should have been doing that the entire time.
Yeah, so we do have, I think points of improvement for both teams. They weren't
But this is a
perfect in game
5-game series.
And this is a 5-game series.
This is literally what this
indeed.
game shows.
Yes.
We're going to go all the way to 5, I guarantee you.
I think so too. I think we will probably go to 5 games. I love how
there we go.
Yes, how excited you are about that prospect. But 5 games or not, SK, they get the first one, and they're off to a great start. In their return to the playoffs, they look to secure another win when we come back in game 2.
Just kept going.